All right, everybody, thank you so much for making it. This is our first meetup of the year, 2025, and I am pumped, woohoo, to see so many people here. Thank you so much, this is a good turnout. Yes, so what I'll do now is I'm going to turn it over to each of our sponsors to give a short pitch and talk a little bit about what they're up to, and we'll start with Rukmini.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's I think, exciting to see the community together. I cheated a little bit. Sorry, I'm just very competitive. So if someone says questions to me, I just can't stop myself. So I'm Rukmini. I'm the SVP of Engineering here at PagerDuty. Welcome. And fun fact, I was not less than 6 months ago at Slack. And I think it's a very full circle moment when you come together and see two companies you were part of like for so long come together and have, I think there's something so common between Slack and PagerDuty. If I think about it, industry leaders, category creators comes to mind. But I think what's also been fascinating about both these companies and their journeys is they created communities around them. Right? Slack created Slack communities and collaboration, and PagerDuty created SREs and a new way to work, and it's just the relationship between these two. Just having a full circle moment here. But I just want to thank you. Do you all know what PagerDuty does? Who knows what PagerDuty does? Yeah?
Give us the elevator pitch.
Oh, elevator pitch. Okay, this is really testing my skills live. So who remembers July 19th when the world went down and all the blue screens around the world, okay? You remember when all airplanes went away? And so I'm going to do a simple term switch, but when that happened, PagerDuty helped the world get back online because we are the AI-first operations cloud that powers all of digital operations around the world. That's who we are, right? So we support you through all phases of what operation disruption, whether it is like doing the triage phase, when you're coming together, you're discovering something, and all the way to learning, right? We think like operation disruption happens in 3 different categories, right? There's the new and novel way, it's like this is something completely new, I've never seen it before. There's the partially understood, and there's finally the well understood way to solve a problem, and we can help you power through all those phases of the operations lifecycle. So that's who we are, and we've been here in San Francisco for many, many, many years. So I'm excited for this amazing panel you'll have ahead. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting insights shared. So thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rukmini. Also, just a quick thank you to Sid and Nick all the way there at the front. I could see you guys. Thank you so much, the guys at the front desk. Thank you for checking everyone in. It's an important task, so thank you. Really appreciate that. And also, I want to say a small thank you to Elias Wambugu from the Next Creative Group. This gentleman right here is our videographer. He's taking video, and we'll post a video after next week. So if you missed it or you want to share it with some colleagues, you can share the video link out there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mike Linton.
Hello. Thank you guys all for coming. Really excited to be here. And thanks again, Rukmini, for being a wonderful hostess. Here. I'm Mike. I function as the head of sales for Foqal, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of what Foqal is. Give, as I mentioned to Rukmini, the elevator pitch, hopefully in a way that makes sense for your day-to-day IT operations. I know how valuable your time is, so don't worry. I'm not going to, clog up your LinkedIn feed and say, hey, give me some free feedback on our AI app, because that seems to be IT pros' 7 out of 10 messages that they get there. So what is Foqal other than a funny name? At its heart, Foqal takes Slack messages and turns them into support tickets to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. Now, what does that mean? Practically, I mean, we take the same thing for email, chat, even since there's some Salesforce people here, Salesforce Chatter. And we create a bidirectional bridge between, Slack and your ticketing system. Now, that ticketing system could be Foqal's. We have a state-of-the-art ticketing system, or it could be one of the popular ones out there, such as Jira, Salesforce, or Zendesk. And we seamlessly integrate with Salesforce, as a matter of fact. Zendesk and Jira, we're technology partners for all of these guys. A lot of engineering teams, as I'm sure you're very well aware, love Jira. Well, we can actually create a tri-directional bridge between Jira, Slack, and your ticketing system to make sure that, any message that gets updated in any one of those platforms updates in real time across all of them. So we create a lot of visibility there. And that's the tip of the iceberg. Really what the heart of Foqal is that we enable automations, complex actions without having to leave Slack, due to our dozens of sophisticated integrations, one of which is PagerDuty, and we're very proud of that, and it works seamlessly for us. But to give you an example, raise your hands, is approval workflow a big part of your, day-to-day? Say a few folks out there. Okay, what about onboarding and offboarding and all that sort of thing? And you find that you're, leaving Slack and you're going into other, integrations or other, platforms. Well, what we do is actually integrate with those platforms in such a way that you never have to leave Slack. So I'll give you a quick example. Let's say use Salesforce as an example. Somebody pings you and says, I need access to Salesforce. Foqal will automatically go into your identity management platform, find out who that person's manager is, send them a DM, say approve or deny. If they hit approve, we'll actually add the user to the correct group, provision the software, all without you having to do anything, but you have complete visibility. For onboarding and offboarding, how many, people can say that they had to wake up in the middle of the night because they had to onboard or offboard somebody in a different time zone, right? And you had to set your alarm. Anyone? Has that happened? Okay, you've seen that before. We can actually, automate all of that and go into, say, a kanji or whatever your device management system is, and set up a schedule and make sure that that all happens exactly when you need it to, on that particular time zone. So there's a lot of different things. I'm not going to scratch the whole surface here and go into the nonsense, but there's hundreds of automations, intelligent routing of requests, public-private messages, assigning tickets, inviting participants, and each Slack channel can be custom configured to whatever the use case is needed. And let's see. Because tonight is a focus on AI, we use that as well. So we can actually tap into your knowledge base. Foqal has its own knowledge base, but we can also tap into Confluence, Notion, or whatever you might be using, even if it's public-facing websites, and use AI to answer commonly asked questions and create deflection and hopefully take a little bit of the ticket load off of you guys. But enough of me talking about it. I'm going to show you a really brief video with people who are a lot more attractive than me.
Welcome to
which
Foqal,
is not a high
where
bar.
we transform your help desk experience with seamless Slack integration. Discover how effortlessly our tools streamline ticket creation and resolve queries with ease. First, let's create your help desk channel in Slack. Invite all your employees to the channel and make it the default for new hires. Next, invite and configure the Foqal bot into your help desk channel. With Foqal enabled, the floating channel menu becomes a useful part of your workspace, always available to create requests. Employees can simply click on Create Request from the floating channel menu. Depending on your setup, they'll see different request types, from simple drop-downs to complex forms with custom fields and attachments. Optimize efficiency with deflectable request types. When an employee has a question, our AI dives into your knowledge base or integrated platforms like Confluence and Notion to provide instant answers. Employees can view the AI-generated answer and the related articles. If further assistance is necessary, they can still create a request directly from this interface. In public mode, requests create a visible thread in your channel. It's perfect for sharing common solutions with all employees. For sensitive matters, private mode directs messages to the requester, ensuring the conversation remains confidential between them and the help desk agent. Once a ticket is created, Foqal takes it a step further by sending automatic approval requests directly within Slack. Whether it's to a user's manager, a specific group, or an app owner, Foqal manages the approval workflow effortlessly. Even if employees direct message your team, no worries. Hover over any message in Slack, click Create Ticket, and fill out the request type on their behalf. Experience seamless, efficient help desk operations with Foqal and Slack. Empower your team and elevate your support process today. Visit Foqal.io to get started.
one of the last points that video just illustrated, and I'd love another raise of hands if you'd be so kind. How well do your colleagues actually use your ticketing system, or do they just DM you most of the time? If people are more DMing you, please raise your hands. Okay, so you're getting that quite a bit. Our customer Cohere, after implementing Foqal for 90 days, found out that 83% of their support requests were not being logged in their systems. They were DMs. And you can imagine what a headache that is, because you can't categorize any of those requests. You can't add, articles to your knowledge base to answer those commonly asked questions. And worst of all, you guys and your teams are not getting the recognition you deserve for all the tickets that you're answering. So these are the problems that Foqal is designed to solve. If you really like interesting automations, you can talk to an expert at a company like Zapier, who I think they know a few things about automations. They had a lot of choices out there. They chose Foqal. And the companies that are in the know and really do want to make their workload easier also do. Guys, thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. If you're interested in learning more, find me, Vlad, or Kevin here. And once again, thanks for being great hosts, PagerDuty. And guys, enjoy the panel.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks to our panel. Awesome. So we will be talking today about a very, very important topic that no one's ever heard of. Actually, is a topic that my grandma talks about pretty much daily, AI. My grandma's 95, so that's kind of an interesting metric. But today I think we're talking about it from a little bit of a different perspective. We're talking about it from like the internal kind of support and employee support perspective. So what companies are doing, what employees are kind of demanding, basically what's going on. So we'll talk for about 40 minutes. There'll be some Q&A at the end. So I want to start off with a little bit of intros. So I'm going to just pass it around. And so give your name, kind of a little bit about what you do, where you work, and what's your favorite inexpensive restaurant in the city, or I guess Seattle.
That's the hard part. Hey, everyone. I'm Dan Turchin. I'm the CEO of PeopleReign, the AI-first platform that automates the delivery of employee service. We give every employee back about 4 to 6 hours of productive time per week by automating about the 5,000 most common tasks that employees do, everything from updating your benefits to ordering the laptop, troubleshooting your technology, booking conference rooms, all the sort of thing that generates friction at work. We do it for some of the largest, most respected organizations on the planet, like Netflix, Parsons Corporation. I'm joined by a special member of what we call ourselves the Rain Train. Stacy Jacobs there. Thanks for joining us, Stacy. Local resident. Applause-worthy. Not intended. I've been in and around this space for about 3 decades. In fact, my last company was one of the first investments made from the Slack fund, back when it was like Cal and Stuart and like a couple other people and a small fund. PeopleReign's the 7th company I've started in this space. My passion project on the side, I host a podcast called AI and the Future of Work. We've published over 300 episodes. We have a community of about 1 million listeners. Check it out if you're not already listening to those great conversations, and looking forward to meeting the panelists. Oh gosh, the most important topic. In honor of my friend Sanjeev, who traveled out here from India, I'm going to say the food hall in downtown San Jose. If you've never been there, right now don't go there because GTC is going on and it's a mess. But the absolute best Indian street food right next to the San Jose Convention Center. Sanjeev, you inspired me. I don't even know what it's called, but it's a little hole in the wall. It's called Soma, I think, but it's south of Market, but downtown San Jose. If you haven't been there, go there, enjoy it. I think it's authentic, but Sanjeev will have to correct me if it's not.
Hi, everyone. My name is Everaldo. I'm a senior engineering manager here at PagerDuty. Is it better? Nice. I'll keep this really close. So I'm a senior engineering manager at PagerDuty. I lead the applied AI team here. We work on a bunch of the different AI features that you may have used at PagerDuty, or you may have not even noticed that you were using, but you were. I work out of Seattle, Washington, so I flew in here today, and I was told to tell you that I flew in just for this, so that must be true. My favorite restaurant, I got some suggestions from the locals here, but then they started to fight each other, so I'll just give you a Seattle restaurant instead if you're ever there. There's a restaurant called Mike's Noodle. There's no one there named Mike. I have no idea why it's called Mike's Noodle. It's a Chinese noodle restaurant. It's really great, cash only. Definitely stop by if you're ever in Seattle.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm an IT engineer over at Wayve AI. We are a company that teaches cars how to drive by themselves, regardless of model. It's really cool. What do I do? Oh God. Obviously, IT engineer. I've been working in tech for about 7 years. A lot of my job is process optimization. I'm lazy, and so are other people, and I want to make jobs easier for them. My favorite low-cost restaurant, I am an expensive kind of person. So the closest I get is a ramen shop in Japantown called Suzu. Go there every single month. It's so good and relatively cheap for the Bay. Anywhere else may be expensive, but for the Bay, it's good.
Suzu. I've been to a bunch of the ones in Japantown, but I don't think I've been in that one. I was gonna say my favorite one, if you haven't been to, I'm just plugging it because also I'm kind of biased. It's like a friend that owns it. But if you've ever been to Frank Grizzly's, it's so go there. It's in it's a little bit out of town. It's in the city, but it's a little bit in the southern part of the city. They have the best breakfast duck burrito. You have to go there early because they really run out of it most days pretty early, but go there. Anyway, cool. So I got all the people that I forced to go with me to there were well, I appreciated it. Awesome. So kind of kicking off the topic, I mean, the first topic is really about kind of where what's changing? What's really where the industry is going, right? And start off, so where we're seeing, at least on the Foqal side, is that there's a lot more demand, especially in the last year, around AI features, right? Anything from kind of deflection to routing to all that kind of stuff. So I kind of want to start off with you, Emily, since you're in the kind of AI product space, right? What are you seeing from your kind of, employees? What are you seeing from your internal customers? What's the demand been like recently?
Yes. Everything. Wayve is really focused on integrating AI in just about everything we're doing. We have an AI buddy for everything. A lot of the requests I'm getting right now is primarily for managing a lot of low-level tasks in our help desks. Things that, take 5 minutes, but those account really, really quickly for your day. A lot of coding things, a lot of document generation has been a really big request. Basically, whatever we can do to use AI to drive down how much time we're spending on menial tasks has been really big.
Interesting. I mean, Dan, how about you? From obviously your company is very AI driven, and that's part of your product. What are you seeing actually from your customers? I guess what is there? Are you seeing more, or is there a difference in demand or change in demand in terms of what your customers are requesting from you?
I'd say the volume of demand is the same as it was a year ago. It's ubiquitous, but the nature of the demand is 180 degrees different. A year ago, everything was kind of in a science lab. Everything was experimental. The business case was not driving the demand. It was really out of curiosity about what the limits of the technology can do. Completely different today. I'm just thinking back in the last couple hours. I had a call. I wish I had more of these. It was not with anyone in IT or HR or any functional head. It was with the CFO, who said, I've challenged my CIO to support 2x the number of employees we currently have within the next 12 months and do it without adding headcount. That's a business conversation that is easier to build a business case around that might or might not involve AI, but we're no longer talking about the how. We're talking about the what and the why. So that's completely different from last year.
Everaldo, I mean, I butchered your name, sorry. And then how about you? I mean, you're at PagerDuty. You're, obviously PagerDuty. You're also on the kind of the AI front of it. So you're building a lot of stuff to. I mean, personally, as a PagerDuty user, I get paged in the middle of the night. So how are you making it so that I'm sleeping better at night?
Let me think about how to answer that. But Also, it's me personally paging you. when
I
that
know you're
happens,
calling, you
but,
got my phone number, you're
um,
texting me, you're calling me.
Exactly. But so we actually have a lot of demand for features that reduce the number of times we wake you up, as well as anyone else that's using PagerDuty. Right? So there's been a lot of demand for the effective use of AI to identify incidents that are not that important that we can suppress so that you don't get woken up in the middle of the night, or incidents that we know will auto-resolve after some time so we can avoid waking you up again. So there's been a lot of demand in that noise reduction front. And then more recently, there's also been a lot of demand for more automation, more interesting ways to triage different incidents and route them the right way. So, and in addition to that, there's also another interesting side, which is customers want to be shown the impact of these AI features, right? People are becoming really savvy. Simple AI use cases don't just cut it, and people want to be able to see the impact of the features that we're developing sometimes ahead of time. So we've had to think also about how to demonstrate that you stand to benefit by turning them on before you do so. Yeah.
Interesting. So one of the things you actually mentioned there was kind of around automation, which is kind of our next interesting topic, I think, is automation. So, historically we've seen automation kind of kick off that, I think we talked about a couple of like access requests and vendor approvals and onboarding and offboarding stuff. I mean, I think for PagerDuty, maybe there are slightly different automations, but I guess, since you mentioned what are the types of automations that you're seeing AI applied, and how is it even applied from with a PagerDuty perspective?
Yeah, we've been looking at a bunch of different things. A couple of examples I can mention is we have an automation product that allows customers to set up workflows, for example, and it can actually be fairly difficult to set up the workflows themselves. So the process of looking through all the possible tasks, all the possible triggers, everything that's available to you in itself can be kind of a daunting task. So automating the process of creating those workflows is one of the things that we've been looking at, and using generative AI or agents to make that process a little bit more streamlined, where you can have a more sort of a conversational interaction with something that helps you set up that workflow. So that's one of the things that we've been looking at in a variety of use cases where customers have to set up a fairly complex feature to have a nice gain at the end once that's all said and done. So helping them achieve that clean, streamlined setup is one of the things where we've seen AI work for very effectively.
Gotcha. But I mean, it sounds like, so those are all kind of admin side, right? Like it sounds like the AI piece there is on helping you configure PagerDuty better. Is there certain things on, I guess that's a little bit more, end user facing or something that's AI, or is less of that?
Definitely. So we have been working on a variety of AI features that are more user-facing. The ones I mentioned on my introduction are all fairly directly user-facing. So features that can monitor the types of incidents that you're seeing, how long they last, if they auto-resolve, what the type of resolution is. If you are an on-call engineer, there are often a lot of different tasks that you have to complete as part of being on call. Like once you wake up, you have to try to identify what the problem is, what the impact is, who you need to inform, what the stakeholders that need to be aware of the status of that incident are. And we have a number of AI features now that have been built as part of that timeline that assist you in giving you back a little bit of time, so you don't have to necessarily write a status update to your manager or your VP. There's a feature there that we built using AI that makes that a little bit easier, with the advantage of having the data around that incident available to it. So you get a little bit of extra time to focus on the incident when some of these things can be created on your behalf.
You mentioned there's features that you're not allowed to say. I was just trying to see if we can get some, features that you're not allowed to say
Nice try,
on camera and broadcast it to the world.
Maybe next time.
Gotcha. How about you, Dan? Are you seeing a lot of, I guess, in terms of automation, right? I think internally when you're supporting I think, you mentioned you're trying to automate 600 common tasks. How is AI kind of building in that, right? Is it on the kind of the admin side in terms of configuration side? Is it on the kind of end user side where the automation is actually being implemented? Where are you kind of seeing that?
I'll talk about it from the perspective of the end users, the employees. The patterns haven't necessarily changed because what we do at work hasn't necessarily changed. how we get those tasks done on our behalf is what has changed. So increasingly, just at a cultural level, we now appreciate that not submitting a ticket and not waiting in a queue is actually more efficient. And so given the option of interacting with maybe an AI-driven solution, maybe it's in Slack, et cetera, we're actually now starting to default to that mechanism. So your password resets, your get me access to the building, your book me a conference room, troubleshoot my VPN connection, those still exist. Maybe in the future they won't, but increasingly those workloads are being pushed out to a digital AI first channel. I will mention the two emerging use cases that we're seeing that are really kind of AI first use cases. Maybe taking something we used to do manually and it's really shifting the whole way of thinking about how work gets done. One of them is, we call it a knowledge gaps analysis. So every organization universally is dissatisfied with the hygiene of their knowledge content, and great use case for AI to automatically monitor and identify where the gaps are based on the inverse between what created a ticket. Every ticket is essentially a missed opportunity to have deflected the ticket autonomously. So knowledge gap analyses go through and look at your content, identify how, quote, big the gap is, and authors the content to be able to plug the gap. Second emerging use case, expert interviews. So the old, not the old field, but the old way of doing L&D, learning and development, super antiquated. Not ideal for human beings, but when all you had was a traditional LMS, a learning management system, then you had to send out a silly notification and say, hey, go take this compliance course, et cetera. That's not the way people actually learn. So with AI, what we're able to do is record video interviews with the human experts. Could be, you know, the head of engineering, the head of product, the CEO, the board, et cetera, and create digital twins of those experts, and then make those accessible via conversational AI. So it's taking something that was done really poorly, it was ubiquitous, right? We all need to learn. But now with the advent of AI, we can capture these recordings and bring to life the whole learning process in a way that, ironically, is much more human, because it's much easier to consume that information. So two emerging use cases that are a little different from what we've seen in the past.
Interesting. It's interesting because like some of the things you're saying, it's like we're seeing that kind of similar approach internally. It's well, I like that both these combinations, right? It's like my takeaway from the PagerDuty case is that there's a lot more that can be done internally in terms of helping set up the automation workflows, and then when it's more user facing, there's a lot more that can be done to, you know, better understand the requests and better prioritize. And I think one thing that you brought up interesting is like we're still having those issues for the time being, and I'm waiting for that day where we don't have those issues because it's predictive, where it's like, oh, you lost your password access or whatever. And then Emily, I mean, you've recently joined Wayve, obviously, or I mean, it's been a few months now, but you're still, I would say, fairly new, right? So you're kind of looking at this whole system. You're looking at, you know, bringing new things. How are you thinking about automation, and how are you, first of all, prioritizing? What are the things you're prioritizing? And then is there a thought of like, how do you put AI into that prioritization of automating those internal flows and customer-facing flows?
Totally. So first off, Wayve grew very quickly and very organically, which means that there are a lot of challenges in automation. There's a lot of weird things that are manual, a lot of weird things that are already automated, because we have great engineers. I forgot the question. Hold on. How do we prioritize that? It's realistically, one, what is important for compliance? Always a problem. And second, what can we realistically easily deflect? Like Dan was mentioning, AI has made people a lot more responsive to bots and being able to talk to something very naturally versus having to reach out to like support for something, which means we can automate, again, a lot of those menial tasks day by day. So yeah, there's an AI opportunity there for more technical, like security compliance related things. We're starting to see a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Adoption of that. There was a really, really cool vendor that we just reviewed that is focused on security, response. And they have a bot that can entirely manage an incident from step A to Z very effectively. and still.
Was it PagerDuty by any chance?
It was not. I'm so sorry. um, so I'm very excited to see where that goes and where we can get AI involved in a lot more critical systems.
Is there, I mean, kind of what are the things that maybe you're automating, or as much as you can say now, what are maybe the top 3 things you're automating? And one interesting thing you said is compliance. Is like, is that because you're European, or your company's more European? Are you seeing more compliance things? And is the AI more of a thing with European compliance?
It is an incredible challenge between both Europe and the US to reach our compliance needs. So we usually go with whatever's strictest. Prioritization has been on offboarding, which is always a challenge, 24/7. Offboarding, onboarding, it's really the big one. The next one, again, menial tasks, very easy deflections. Third, I'm having a thought. Come back to me. It's gone.
Just those 2.
Just those 2.
Nothing else is important.
Nothing else is important, obviously. I would say offboarding is number 1, onboarding, and then those menial tasks.
I was hoping it would be the other way around. You're hiring more people than firing.
So we have a very good onboarding process.
So you're onboarding so effectively now that you actually don't need.
Being a hypergrowth startup, we got to onboard very quickly and very well. And offboarding needs a little bit more time.
I mean, if you're not, if no one's ever leaving, you don't need to offboard.
Exactly. No one ever leaves Wayve because we're an amazing company. Thank you.
And an awesome product that we're still all waiting. We're all still waiting to see. So from the perspective of like learning from our learning, right? Learning from our data. Everaldo, I'm sorry, dude.
Okay.
Everaldo, PagerDuty has a history of like lots of data. I mean, I learned today that anybody know how old PagerDuty is? 2009. It's older than I thought it was. So PagerDuty has a, sorry? Same age as Slack. Yeah. They're just ancient companies, but PagerDuty is independent. Hasn't been bought by Salesforce yet. So, so that's next month. Anyway, so what are you learning from your data? I mean, you obviously have a history of lots and lots of data for the last 15 years or something. What are you learning, and how are you taking data to apply your learnings, and how do you are you using that to build better models, or are you learning that to even figure out how to get the AI interaction with the model better, or how do you like to improve the support experience, or to provide a better kind of experience for the product?
Yeah, all of the above. I think a lot of the more interesting learnings that we came across in the past few years were a little bit meta in a way. And we learned that data for a bunch of our customers was really different from one another. So whatever solutions we were building with AI had to be thought about from each individual account's perspective, just to make sure that they worked well for across the board. That I wasn't just suppressing noise for you, which clearly, apparently I'm not doing a great job at, but that also worked across our other customers. And even within the customers, over time, data changes, and we have to make sure that the AI solutions adapt to that. So that's also been a really interesting learning in automating how the models keep up with changes across accounts, across time, and making sure that they're always up to date. So nowadays, we're also looking into a lot of interesting generative AI solutions to making sure that as data changes for a customer, they are alerted of that. They are provided recommendations as to what they should do to make sure that as the data is transitioning to a different format or new things are coming in and they don't look anymore like they did last month, that your solutions, your models are adapting alongside those changes. So I think for me personally, a lot of the interesting learnings came from that, and identifying that we really had to tailor a lot of our solutions to individual accounts, and we had to account for change across time and automating the process of making sure the models were up to date.
But that's like improving the models, right? But then in terms of is there any kind of learnings? And also there's a topic on that later. So if you want, you can hold on to that. But is there any learnings in terms of like how AI is used in terms of improving the product or improving the interaction between end user and AI and kind of that whole world? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's pretty, one thing we noticed is users are becoming more and more comfortable with using AI to a higher degree. And that's also part of the fact that AI is becoming more ubiquitous. So people are using AI elsewhere, and then they become a little bit more comfortable using AI in different spaces like our features. And I think over time, like we started with very simple noise reduction features that were, very simple to use. And we started to incrementally implement things that were a little more complex, that performed things that were more impactful.
.io.
Oh,
I don't know what that is. Get it off the screen.
Glad it's not your email or.
oh wow. What was I saying? That was-
We're all just watching what Mike is doing. What is this PeopleReign?
Anyway, and so nowadays we have a variety of fairly complex generative AI and agentic AI features that I couldn't imagine someone feeling super comfortable using a while ago, but nowadays it's very clear that you're getting some positive impact from using those features, and people are familiar with the type of interface and interactions that they have with those models.
I like all the background video. It's like we got all of the cool products. But interesting point that like I think and that actually is a good transition, Dan, since you actually stole my notes of what I was going to ask you for this part. So now I have to change my question. So thanks for that. So I guess actually with that, like we've seen actually a similar problem with, and actually changed within the last year, that people are getting more comfortable with AI, where it's like a year ago we were having conversations about like, hey, let's bring AI in. People were like, our legal team isn't ready, or whatever team doesn't know how to handle it, where now it's a lot easier of a conversation. So first of all, are you seeing that, where are you seeing that conversation is becoming easier? How have you seen that change? And coming back to the original thing is also like what we kind of also seen is like AI is only as good as the data behind it. So, I mean, one of the things you already kind of mentioned was that, like, you're analyzing the kind of the diff between what AI provides and like that opportunity. But what are you? So, is it just like product features or stuff that you're doing other than this kind of like analysis of like tickets to create articles? Is there other things that you're doing to like improve the user's data so that you can actually get better AI models or better answers?
Yeah, and I'll first point out the .com note that went to like a creepy like AI generated Statue of Liberty arm, but when you go to PeopleReign.io, the real site, it's like people enjoying each other's company. Make a note. Very intentional. Yeah, so I mean, best way to answer that is in the context of maybe just an example, a story, what customers are doing. But first, a couple platitudes. So all AI is a data problem, but all business problems are not AI problems. Anything that can be predicted is better left to machines. But anything that requires rational thinking or judgment or empathy is and always will be better left to humans. Case in point, so earlier today I was talking to an organization that's going to be using PeopleReign, 300,000 global employees, and we were unpacking the right way to automate the BCP, the business continuity planning process. So they can automate as much of the process as they can when there's an active DR, disaster recovery event. And so we're talking about, if there's a flood that brings down a data center in a remote corner of the world, mobilize. Like clocks ticking, lives are at stake, burning dollars, brand equity. What do you do? Well, the important thing to note is that there's some tasks that are part of bringing that, putting out the fire, stopping the flood, whatever it is, that just require the innate competence of humans. And then there are other parts that can facilitate the innate work that humans do, where the answers are trapped in the data. Example, being able to instantly bring up, the number of the flood control zone, notify the water company to turn off the pipes. What that list is of action items, that's somewhat robotic, because there are lots of bits of data that are trapped in the crevices of the enterprise that have all those answers. So bring to bear kind of this hit list of, in the context during the triage, the active triage of that flood or whatever it is, what it is that the humans need to do next and in what order. But the other key thing that's trapped in the data is who are the best humans to do each of these tasks. So the power of data is saying, in the past, when similar floods have happened, here are the 3 people who did the most work for each of these tasks. This one's offline, call this one immediately. So we took something, not pride of authorship, but just the company is unpacking this really complex, really, really high stakes process and isolating what's a data problem and where the data lives. And ultimately, when it comes down to the technology, it's easy. It's not the hard part. The hard part is really understanding where the human can be augmented or complemented by the machine, the AI, the data. And what I hope to see and what's happening in real time is more organizations embracing this data-driven culture. That's when you really get the unlock of the true value. When AI is transformative, it's because we think about it in terms of that way of solving a problem.
So you're building Terminator.
The opposite of Terminator.
The opposite. Where you're building,
Not Skynet.
Yeah, well, not Skynet. You're building Terminator. Too. One of those. I'm bad at that movie reference, I guess. So Emily, how about you at Wayve? How are you? I guess using AI and kind of like how are you improving that like model? How are you improving the kind of automation and experimenting to figure out how to get better? How do you get kind of better support, better automation, better models, better everything to improve the customer experience, the end user experience? And how are you kind of learning from this stuff? Are you doing some kind of experiments? Are you, how do you prioritize which ones to go first? That kind of stuff.
So great question. As Dan said, data is so important and Slack has a ton of it. So a lot of our the focus right now is to utilize any of the data that we have in Slack to go ahead and optimize that support process. I am working right now on an internal little thing to begin categorizing and typing tickets so that we can start seeing the trends in that data and where we need to either automate or define processes that don't exist yet. Train of thought, hold on. So we can find the trends in that and automate anything that we can. As you said, humans are sometimes important, so we have to think about the processes that we can't. Experimentation has been a little fun, because trying to pull that out all by yourself is not terribly. I've sat for several hours doing that myself. I hate it. I want a bot to do it. How do I finish out that question? I think that's the end of my question.
Yes. Well, you mentioned experimentation. How are you?
Yeah.
How are you experimenting?
How are we experimenting? Actually, just on our live data as we go. That AI needs to be agile. We need to be agile on that. So it's realistically as much as we can automate and we can utilize that to what's the word I'm looking for? Process that data. It's constantly evolving.
But I mean, in terms of like, let's say user experience and like IT support kind of cases, like, are you saying, okay, well, like, for example, you're saying you need to prioritize offboarding, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing the offboarding, is there some kind of experimentation where you're saying, okay, well, I guess I don't know how much experimentation you could do with offboarding, but like, is there, for example, when you're setting up new flows, when you're doing some automations, there are things of like, okay, we know that if we set up the flow in this way, people will use it more often. This is how it'll work. People are more likely to kind of comply. People, if there's an approval, they're more likely to do approvals. Is there any kind of like experimentation around when you're setting up these support flows? Is there like, how do you analyze, how do you improve support? I guess in general, how are you analyzing existing tickets or existing experiences to improve support in the future?
So ChatGPT is really, really useful for looking at a bunch of data at once. No, it realistically is, we start with just a basic idea, something that we've done before, we know works. And because most of these processes don't exist yet, that's where we have to start. And then just continually checking in and iterating and iterating and iterating on what works and what doesn't based on whatever data we can get out of this. How long did XYZ take to work? Did we successfully retrieve a laptop back, etc.? How do we get people to engage with those workflows as much as we can? Is, a message in a channel working, or is a DM better?
So kind of sticking with you, last topic here. In terms of user adoption, right? And I think we kind of covered this a little bit in terms of how do we get, I guess, companies to adopt it, and AI is becoming more ubiquitous and more, I guess, loved by employees. But are you seeing, from the kind of support perspective, are you seeing more adoption? I mean, obviously everyone loves ChatGPT and uses it all the time, but other than that, are you seeing that, like, if you're building, let's say if you're building an AI flow, then it's more likely that people adopt it? How are you seeing it from a user perspective? How is AI being adopted, more or less, or how is it changing over time?
I think with AI becoming, again, a lot more natural and a lot more thought of as a buddy. Think of it as a friend. It is someone who you can talk to easily without, like, nobody wants to come to me. I'm IT. I have a face. There's a reputation that comes along with that. So they're going to want to talk to something that's not going to judge them. And the adoption for that has been pretty positive, and it very easily deflects very simple questions. How do I access the Wi-Fi? It's not something I need to spend my time on, nor is it something that somebody else needs to spend their time on. So it's been, in my company in particular, it's pretty easy to convince people to use AI. And we are an AI company. We are actively developing these models. So getting adoption is pretty easy for us.
Gotcha. Dan, how about yourself? I mean, I think we touched on this a little bit, but have you seen any pushback, or is that, I guess, changing a lot in the last year, a few months or whatever, in terms of how are companies adopting it? Is there pushback from accepting models, or I guess in general, what are you seeing in terms of change, in terms of like how adoption is changing in the last few months or a year?
Globally, the biggest impediment to adoption of AI tools is organizational change management. So I know it's kind of Captain Obvious speaking, but the fact is that the cultures where leadership has defined a policy or put in place some guardrails that make employees feel safe, that's where you have shadow AI no longer being a thing. We're all in and around the world of IT, shadow IT, kind of a negative connotation, right? We don't want the end user, the employee, to be their own IT tech, right? Well, with AI, everyone's confused. They're like, well, should I be proud of it? Am I going to get penalized for it? Am I going to get fired? Is it going to take my job? So the smart leaders are breaking down the barriers by saying, like, here's our culture. We celebrate innovation, we celebrate creativity, and you know what? We're all going through this global experiment together. Like, because you're a leader or manager doesn't mean you have the answer about what's the best way to use an AI tool. So the best cultures, what they do is celebrate creativity and experimentation. Something that we encourage all of our customers do. Is a very simple thing, non-technical. We call it taking the pledge. And here's how it works. We ask every organization to have every one of their employees say, I openly and honestly agreed to share when and how my work product was contributed to or augmented by AI. Super simple. You can put it like, on the bathroom stall. But the cultures that just have every employee take the pledge, like, are the most innovative, because what it says is, from a leadership perspective, like, our culture isn't here to slap you on the wrist or wait for you to do something wrong. Like, just teach us. Like, when you do something awesome, like, we're going to have a forum once a month. We're going to bring together a bunch of ideas. We're going to nominate someone to tell their story about what they did. In work, out of work, doesn't matter. But after like 4, 6, 8 months, and you've got all these stories and these use cases and these tools, like, everyone's got conviction around what's working, and all of a sudden everybody then comes into these venues, and the chatter at the water cooler, things like that, is about the cool stuff they're doing. Nobody's afraid of it. Nobody's afraid of the bot. Nobody's afraid of being penalized for using them. So there are certainly impediments to adoption, but I think cultures that just celebrate asking questions, telling stories, learning from each other, that's the best way to make sure that you get the benefits of AI as fast as possible.
And I guess from a user perspective, right? Is there, are you seeing like in terms of product specifically, is there some difference in terms of over the last few months? Like I think you're looking at it from the cultural perspective and that makes sense. From a user perspective in terms of product adoption, feature adoption, how people are using it, have you seen much change that way?
Well, I did run some numbers recently that shocked me. Kind of tangentially related, but more interesting than what you asked me. So it turns out if you look at a small sample size, but organizations were engaged with it, PeopleReign, there's actually an inverse correlation between how technical the employee base is and how comfortable they are adopting AI. I looked through the data, try to unpack why. I think organizations that tend to have more technical employee bases or even technical organizations in the product that they sell, they're into questioning it. And sometimes it's okay to just think of it as a work tool. Because you get in the car and drive to work, it doesn't mean you need to know about the internal combustion engine. It's okay to just get in the driver's seat. You have a license, drive. Similarly, I find a lot of organizations that you think of as non-technical, the marketing team, the comms team, the finance team, they just say, how can I help me do my job better? And so sometimes they're less reluctant in an environment where there are kind of guardrails and there are policies for how to use it. But yeah, in terms of things that we see out there that are changing and ways to identify some of the patterns early of what's going to work and how quickly you can get it to work. That's just one observation that to me was non-obvious.
Very interesting. And Everaldo, how about you? Are you from like the PagerDuty perspective? I mean, I know like, personally as a PagerDuty user, again, like I only log in when there's an incident, and what you're doing is making it so I log in even less because there's, you're kind of quieting all the duplicates and all that other stuff. So you're doing stuff to make me log into the product even less, which is, I guess, good. But from a kind of user adoption and usage and that kind of perspective, it's kind of working behind the covers. But do you feel like people are understanding that value? Is there something you're seeing in terms of adoption of usage and from a company perspective, from an end user perspective of PagerDuty, do you see this changing?
Yeah, that's a really good, really kind of interesting example because it feels counterintuitive that the less you use my products, the more engaged you are with the AI functionality. And we're giving you time back so you can go do something else because the noise that you would have had to respond to has been suppressed by AI. But we have been thinking about other things that you can do with some of that time. So there are AI features that are now designed to be used during what we call when there is no incident happening. So you're in planning time. So nothing that's not planned is taking away your attention. So we've done things like taking our internal knowledge base and making it available to customers through one of our assistants. So part of, as you're setting up those noise reductions, those suppressions, which can be fairly complex, you would often have to reach out to a PagerDuty customer support person. They would walk you through that. But now there's ways for you to use AI features to help you set that up. So there's still a lot of engagement across the different AI offerings happening outside that stressful time when you're responding to an incident, which is actually kind of nice. So we're taking away some of your toil by using AI, but also providing you some AI functionalities that you can use with that time that you're getting back. And it's kind of full circle because you're getting some time back to your regular life. And some of that can be used to give yourself even more time, if that makes sense. But also 100% what Dan said, just chiming in on the previous question, I think that getting internal adoption for us was also something that was very highly motivated by our leadership team, like just seeing everybody sharing demos and they themselves using AI. And people used to be fearful of the unknown. They didn't know how AI worked. They didn't know if they were supposed to use AI internally. They didn't know if they were supposed to think about product use cases that used AI. But just having that encouragement and guardrails put in place and trust from everybody that was working with them has really, really helped drive adoption internally and by proxy also externally because we're developing more features that leverage AI.
Awesome. Very cool. I think that was kind of all our topics. I will leave it up for Q&A. Just before that.
Announcement. Just before we do the Q&A, we're going to do a raffle right at the very end. So I'll walk around with this just one more. Last time I saw a lot of you people did sign up. We'll do it right after this. I'm going to turn it over. And I just want to make one last apology. Nitin, our other speaker, he was not able to make it. He ended up coming down ill. So that's the reason why we're short one guy. So anyway, back to you.
Open it up for Q&A.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to direct this first at Dan, but Everaldo, I'd love to have you chime in as well to what you were just talking about. When you talk about people, and I'm trying to give this little context, it's going to sound off the wall, but Iceland recently got the data in on moving to a 4-day work week, and they found out that people's, life satisfaction was a lot greater. And I'm just curious, when you talk about the non-technical people, in the marketing and sales and whatever, using, AI, have you done any research or even anecdotally found out that maybe people are less stressed in their jobs, having greater job satisfaction, a little more mental health, I guess, because they're using the AI? So I don't know if you have any data on that, but I'd be interested to even just your thoughts on it.
Here's the mic. Go first, Sean. I wish I had data like the country of Iceland has data. That sounds fascinating. I have anecdotal data and I have hypotheses. I believe that very soon, like we're talking like 3 to 5 years, we'll all get back a day a week of productive time. And I think that the thing that should be exciting and less scary is that we'll have a choice to make. You can produce, call it 5 days of work in 4 days. What if you use that 5th day to volunteer, to be a better parent, to spouse, caregiver, pursue a hobby? My hypothesis, hopefully we'll have the data, we'll all have the data soon, but that makes you a different person at work, not at work. And I would love to bring my daughters into a world where everybody is celebrating, maybe it's 3 days instead of 2 a week, or whatever, maybe it's blended throughout the week, but that like we're all the best versions of ourselves. Maybe even, I know it seems like super Pollyanna-ish, but maybe everywhere, because that halo effect of like enjoying what you're doing outside work transcends the workplace. Maybe even we have to stop questioning, these are the arbitrary boundaries. Already it's the case that IT can no longer be a traffic cop. Like it no longer works that IT is like, here's when you're going to work, and here's where you're going to work, and the hours that you're going to work, and then just keep doing your thing, and then when you do something wrong, I'll tell you, but just keep doing it. So that idea of my employer kind of trafficking my life, I think is going to go away. And when you add in this, call it a 20% dividend that you're going to get back, I just believe the fundamental nature of who we are as humans changes when we can think about there actually being a buffer of time to do the things that today we always make excuses for not having time to do.
The timing of your question is actually kind of hilarious because we have a Dutonium day tomorrow, so we are all off. But I understand this is a really privileged position to have, but PagerDuty, going back to Seattle today, but tomorrow I'm going to Mike's Noodle and I'll enjoy my day, like knowing that there will be some AI models taking care of the incidents that won't be waking you up. But also internally, I have a lot of applied scientists and machine learning engineers on my team that there's a lot of different things that brings them satisfaction aside from the Dutonium days on Fridays. But there's a lot of AI tools that have made them a lot more efficient, that a lot more productive, and they feel empowered to use some of those tools to get their work done quicker. And maybe that means they can go do something else at 4 p.m. And there's no shame in completing your work a little bit earlier if you're using tools to get the work done, and even doing it more efficiently or using something that's more optimized. So I think there's a lot of interesting AI products that have come up in the recent few months that are helping drive a lot more productivity internally, and to a lot of the engineers and developers, a lot of satisfaction as well in using those tools to complete their work.
Any thoughts, Emily?
thoughts are one, I told you, IT has a bad reputation for telling you where to do what to do it. And yeah, AI has been revolutionary in getting back a lot of that time for people to do things that are not tech or things that are not work related, and making them a little bit more well-rounded and relaxed and able to actually handle those really large problems that, you know, when you're stressed, you don't have the energy to take care of as effectively. So I'm very excited about the time I'm going to get back, not having to tell you what the Wi-Fi password is.
Awesome. What other questions? Anybody have a question?
I've got a question about the choice of models that you're using potentially within your businesses. How do you choose, and especially with the rapidly changing landscape, I know from my experience, like cost of models is pretty key here, because this is a new cost. I know the C-suite is saying, oh, we've got to do something with AI, but when they see the bill, it's like, okay, can we charge extra for this? But yet, you know, how do you deal with that? The choice of model, rapidly changing landscape. What's your strategy for addressing that with that sort of cost dynamic as well?
We're still refining that strategy, but one thing that we chose pretty early was to be very flexible and go broad. So we have built internal tools that allow us to leverage the best models for each of the different use cases that we have. And then as we do that, we think through this trade-offs. Like, do I choose a more expensive model for a feature that requires that level of complexity and that can justify us charging a little bit more? Or do I not need that model? Can I go with a cheaper one? But I think in terms of infrastructure, I think that was a really interesting choice. And a few months later, now we see that that was a really smart choice in creating those bridges across a lot of different vendors, a lot of different models, and providing the internal teams the ability to quickly evaluate how those models perform for different use cases, and having access to up-to-date information on costs and being able to curate lists internally for which types of models work well for what kinds of use cases. But like you said, just during the time I was talking here, there's probably 3 more models so it is a challenging problem to keep up with. But
answer. I think the best AI tools are built for business, that is. I'll qualify this answer. Apps for business users are built with as little of a dependency on the foundation model as possible. They are the most unreliable. They're the most unpredictable. And that's okay when you're doing generative AI tasks. But when you just want the right answer, you want no variability. You want to know every time it's going to get the right answer. And what that means is don't rely on ChatGPT or fill in the blank. At PeopleReign, our approach has been, we let the LLM, in the case when we require them, compete for our business. So we give them a challenge. We give them the instructions. They come back with different answers, and then we evaluate. We have a matrix where we can score their answers. So we're relying on the one that comes back and scores the best in the pageant. But every step of the way possible, we try to eliminate the dependence and rely on our own data about how people get work done. It's trustworthy, it's consistent, it's clean, it's not biased. So we're always going to default to that whenever possible.
Ours has been definitely a little bit of experimentation. If it works, amazing. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The second big kind of thing is, as a lot of these models are coming out, we're worried about the security of that data that's getting processed. I want to say it was like, what, a couple months ago, the DeepSeek thing, where they like had this amazing kind of cheap model, and then 2 days later, there was a leak. So it's being very careful about what you're using. You know, enterprise ChatGPT may be more expensive, but it is consistent and reliable and secure. So weighing those options is very important.
I think one of those options is like on-prem models are becoming more of a powerful and a thing, I guess.
Yeah, they are. I mean, also we have our own models. We're utilizing those a little. It's real fun.
So the answer to yours is just we build our own models and we don't trust anybody.
Yeah, exactly. That's not true. We actually use a lot.
have very good. I don't-
recordings and stuff.
Oh, that's fair. Piggybacking off of that question, how do you determine what is the appropriate amount of access to give these models? When we're talking about sensitive IP, how much from external tools can you trust to have access to your systems, especially when we're talking about multiple integrated systems?
I can take that first.
Yeah, this is open-ended, by the way.
Okay, it's a rare quick answer you'll get from me. Least privilege access. So by default, the foundation models, if we didn't train it, we don't trust it. So everything that we're doing, we RAG based on your data, and the RAG stays confined within our SLM, our small language model. It can never touch a tainted foundation model. I'm super opinionated on that, but I think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, definitely, as with everything else in IT, least access. But while still kind of leveraging, again, what can we reasonably let this process, what needs to stay close to heart, and what, again, is important for compliance? What can I not let go?
Fairly similar answer for me, but we do have a very thorough process of vetting the models that we do use externally, and we disclose the risks and the mitigations that we implemented internally to our customers whenever possible. And for specific types of use cases, we do train models internally, and those never leave our premises. And so the data remains siloed at the account level and never gets shared externally or even internally across customers. But when we do that for some things that are less sensitive, we have a very long list of risks and mitigations that are also made publicly available.
Awesome. One last question over here, and then I think we'll get to raffle.
Hi, Joseph Davin. Thank you for being here. My question is around data quality and how much you spend on that. How do you manage the trade-off between speed and accuracy versus actually spending time on the data and the effort there?
Take it. Because all the data that we're using to make decisions about what action to take comes from the customer, all of the data prep, of which there's a lot. So data is inherently dirty. We first introspect the data, but at least we're confined to data that we can see and touch and train on. So we first do a pass through looking for things like latent bias. Certain decisions, certainly when we're in the domain of HR and things like that, really, really important to see if there's human bias that has seeped into the data. There is, by the way, always. AI is perfectly designed to replicate human bias. But so we do a number of passes through the data looking for known warning signs compared with what the use case is, the intended use case for the data. But it's all about improving the hygiene of the internal data because we can't control what already was used to train a foundation model.
Yeah, for us, I think some of the more complex AI use cases, we are fairly prescriptive as far as how users should set up their product in a way to optimize the quality of the data that we will gather over time, because that data would then get used to retrain our models. And for some of the generative AI features that we have, there's also been this kind of interesting loop that was created by, just to give you a concrete example, we have a feature that generates it bootstraps a post-mortem report when you solve an incident and you want to have a document that collects all the learnings about that particular incident. It can be a really complicated task. A lot of developers hate doing that. It's like, oh, I just finished solving this problem. I don't want to go write the post-mortem. So we have a feature that now gives you a bootstrapped version of that document with a very specific structure. So as people start to use that over time, the quality of the data that we're capturing behind the scenes for that particular piece of product is getting better and better because we're kind of prescribing that format and bootstrapping the beginning of that report for you. But without that kind of template, it can go off the rails and become a lot more complicated to work with. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I can't speak for the terminals or the product models, but specifically for IT and how we manage that. Similar to what you've got for that document generation. I don't want to write about what happened. I had one earlier today. It's very similar for us is letting it is working to generate those docs and letting it kind of what's the word up? What was the word I'm looking for? Jaws. Get better and better as we continue to utilize those tools to document not only our incidents but our internal processes.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks to our panel. I think we're going to go on to the raffle now. So thank you. Round of applause. Thank you for our panel.